For joining our second webinar. We're going to continue to do these every month. Our previous one, you guys can go onto YouTube and find it, was about investing in Costa Rica and just data on the industry. Today, we're going to be talking about construction and also building webinar here with myself, Richard Bexon, who I think that many of you have met or spoken to before, and also Erick Corrales here. Erick is our head of construction and engineering at Belong Costa Rica, which is our development company. Welcome, Erick.
Hello, good afternoon to everyone. Oh, or where you are.
Fantastic. Well, today's agenda, guys, is we're going to take a look at the steps that are involved in construction. A lot of people, it could be quite complicated if you've never done it before. And actually, a lot of people, when they actually do it here in Costa Rica, are amazed at just actually how easy it can be here as well. It can either be great or it can absolutely be a nightmare. It just depends on how you look at it. And really, the idea of this webinar is to just give you the information in order to make kind of an informed decision and also ask the right questions when it comes to all of the individuals that are involved in the construction process as well. So we're going to be talking about the design process, which is the first step, construction documents, also permitting as well. We're also going to talk about the bidding process, which is an actual really valuable part of the construction process, the contract and what things that should kind of include and what it should not include. And then also just the construction itself and how you kind of oversee that and also manage it. At the end, we'll also give you the top 5 recommendations that we have. And then also there'll be a Q&A. But if anyone does have questions that they would like answered at any moment through here, feel free to just answer them. And we'll stop at the end of kind of every section here and answer those questions for you guys, okay? It doesn't matter how, there's no such thing as a stupid question, guys, or whimsical. Feel free to ask it and we'll do our best to answer it. And if we can't, we'll find you the answer. And we typically do so. So to give you guys kind of an idea of the timeline and steps in construction, okay, is the first step here is the design process. This is actually usually done with an architect when you're designing something, and we'll get into more detail on that. That process can be as quick as 3 months, but typically it's about 4 months, can sometimes go longer as you work backwards and forwards on floor plans and kind of designs and also the interior as well with the architect and their team. Then once that stage is done, you then move on to construction documents, which are again, more of the documents that are used for permitting and also construction. That usually takes about 2 months. And then you go into basically from there is permitting. The architect and his team will then take it and actually go into permitting. And that can anywhere take from 2 to 3 months, depending on the complication and also the institutions themselves. In parallel, while this is happening, typically, depending on what your process is, there's usually a bidding process here, guys, as well. If you're working with a project management team, you'll go out to more extensive bidding and value engineering. If you're just working with an architect, they may already have their construction company. You may already be married to them. Our recommendation is always to bid a project, but it does complicate the process. But it can save you, anywhere from 5 to 15, maybe even 20% of the project. Then, basically, once you're through that value engineering and the permitting has been improved, start working on a construction contract, or maybe your lawyer already has one. I would also suggest making sure that your lawyer reviews the construction contract so that everything that needs to be included is, and that you're also covering some of your liability as well. And that usually, it can be quick as 2 weeks. It can be a month. I say a month because usually there's a bit of backwards and forwards between, lawyers there. And then basically you're into construction, and construction can take anywhere from 8 to 12 months, depending on, how big your property is, and also the construction methods that you guys will be using as well. So the whole process from start to finish, I would say if you're really quick, you could probably get it done in 14, 15 months, but you better be very efficient. But I would say typically it's going to be 17 to 21 months here, guys, that it's going to take you to build something here in Costa Rica, okay, from start to finish, which is actually pretty impressive compared to other parts of the world. Our permitting process there of only 2 or 3 months is actually very quick because in some countries it can take years sometimes to permit. So let's jump here into the first stage of that process here, guys, which is the design. Our suggestion is, the way that we always work is to create what we like to call a program within this. And what I mean by a program is that you'll see it here. It just is kind of the house size, bedrooms, how many floors, bathrooms, showers, certain things that you want in it and certain things that you don't, driveways, do you want a gym, yard, all of the kind of the nitty gritty that you kind of want of the house, talking about ceiling heights. Also, budget expectations is very important as well. And then also just kind of like a very short property brief, where you'll also give kind of the lot plano as well, which is actually the plan of the lot location, and any Pinterest ideas that you may have on kind of design as well. I like to give this to architects because they like them from there, is that they actually have something to work with. But it also starts, it starts them off on the right foot, rather than having to kind of spend the meeting trying to get all of these details. Whereas this, we send out typically to architects prior, so that when we interview them, they already have a basis in order to reference when we're having those meetings with them. And also to figure out which architects have done their homework as well, to take a look at this. Because you'll typically, as I've found, is that architects that are very busy, or maybe that don't want your work, typically don't always go into the greatest detail when looking at this. So that's kind of the first thing that we suggest to do. Also have a very clear budget, guys. My advice is, do not give an architect a very wide open budget. I'll say it, I love them, they're artists, but also they're painting art. They're creating, something beautiful. And don't always have a budget in mind. So make sure that your budget is really clear from the beginning here, and make sure that that is a question that you constantly bring up. And we'll have that, we have it a little bit further on, which is every time you go through changes, is updating that budget. And just having clear expectations of what that budget can get you as well. Again, as we said there in that program, define rooms, social areas. So once you have kind of that program and clear budget, you can go out and interview architects, okay? How do you find architects in Costa Rica? You can take a look on Instagram. You can ask around for people that have done projects before. You can go online and write in Costa Rican architects. And there are very many different wide types of architects that charge different fees. Usually it's a percentage of, but sometimes we found it to be lower fixed fees. We found it to be incredibly high fees. It just depends, on the architect that you end up using. But you're typically going to find those fees are going to be between 5 to 6% of your project. So, I mean, if you're building a $500,000 house, you're probably going to find these design fees and construction documents, which come next, are going to be around about the 5% to 6% mark, guys. Again, as I said, there are extremes in other areas, but typically I find that when it's very, very cheap, you're not really getting a great architect. It's more, I would say, engineering than architecture, guys. It's more of a science than an artist. No offense to Eric, who's an engineer there. It's just, we stay in our lanes, right, Eric?
Yep, you're right.
But I think it's really important when you're going through that design phase with your architect, because you can get taken away very easy. And I mean, we've seen it a lot of times where, I don't know, someone had $1 million budget. They went through the whole design process, and then it comes out to be $2 million, and they're absolutely mortified when it comes out through that. But they've already gone through this whole process of getting construction documents done. They're probably six months in at that point, maybe 7 months, and then they get it back that it's $2 million, and they have to go back to the beginning base and start again, and there will probably be fees for that from the architect. So I think it's really, really important, guys, if every single update that you do is ask for a budget update also as well. I mean, we do it on all the projects that we work on. Every single time we're giving complete updates throughout the whole property, throughout the whole design process, so that clients are very clear of where this budget is going, so that there are no shocks when we do come back from legal. And also, one thing to bear in mind with your budget, guys, there are hidden costs, stuff like infrastructure work, which nobody ever budgets for. Landscaping, furniture. So make sure that you've considered kind of all of those costs when also working on that budget as well. Once you're through the design process, you kind of then jump into construction documents, and this is where I'll hand over to Eric.
Thank you, Richard. Well, but basically, during the construction documents process is you will have all the drawings, like complete set of drawings that will allow you to do all the construction. Basically, it starts with the architectural, that it's mainly, the first part is sketches, and then it goes into the more detailed drawings of the architects. Then once the architectural drawings are done and approved by the clients, they will hand that out to the different professionals, like structural engineer and electromechanical engineer. There's a review of those drawings that are done during the process, of the design, in order to make sure that everything is aligned, and there's nothing critical that it's coming up or it's showing up on the drawings. And of course, depending on the project that you will develop, you will need also infrastructure design. That it's very critical because it's mainly, for big projects, there's a lot of money involved in air movement, in roads, in driveways, in big driveways. So that could come a big part of the cost there. So it is very important, once like all the architectural drawings are done, to start working or defining the finishes of the houses. That's a very important part of the construction cost. I will say that it's more than 40-50%, and could be even more depending on the type of finish that you will, as a client, decide for your project. So it is important, very important, to sit down with your architect and start define all the finishes that you will like. Basically, during the construction document phase, there's like two deliveries, 50% and 100%. Normally, if you have a project manager that it's taking care of your project, normally with the 50% delivery, you are able to start the bidding process. But not only that, but also, your project manager should be able to be aware of the estimations, or it could be doing estimations during this phase of drawings, so that the project is always like under the initial estimations, or can aware you of if anything it's like going out of that budget. If not, was like they normally, after 100% of construction drawings, the architects will hand that out to the construction companies that they will normally work, and they will get a quote at the end. If you have a project manager in charge, they should go out and bid at least with 5 different companies, and then be able to get more detailed quotes. And basically that's like the construction documents phase. Like after you have like everything ready, then you just like hand everything out for bidding, and then it's where you start with your bidding analysis. Basically,
I think it's a very quiet time for the client, right? Because they've gone through that design phase, and as soon as they're out of that and in the construction documents, it's a very quiet, like there's not much interaction there between the architects and also the client. And well, I mean, finishes, of course, but like they're not reviewing architectural designs and structural, electromechanical, and infrastructure designs. Like it's usually, as it says there, 2 months, but it could be like 6 weeks of production of those documents, and then 2 weeks to review, where the client's not really involved, unless they're probably engineers and want to see them themselves.
Exactly. But as you say, it's a very quiet part. It will say that it's very busy for the clients at the beginning, the first month and a half, and then after that, it's like a silent period until you get basically your quotes back.
Yeah.
So it's some months of silence during the process.
Typically by this stage, you're probably, by the time your construction docs, are done, you're 5 months kind of into your project now. What we're going to jump into here is just a little bit of bidding here. And again, this is kind of like a 2-month process here from start to finish. It can be shorter, it can be longer, depending on just really how the budget kind of comes back, and then how you value engineer it. But I'll let Erick talk about this.
Yep. Well, during the bidding process, there's 2 different contracts that could take place. One is cost plus, and the other one is key in hand. Basically the difference, cost plus is an administration fee that normally it should be a fixed price, a fixed administration fee, and the client covers like the rest of the cost of the project. So basically it could be like a 2-week, or every month it will get a report of all the expenses of the project, and then the client will reimburse those expenses. And basically, well, it allows the client to be part of the construction a little bit more, but also, if there's any saving during the construction process due to negotiations, it will be the client will have those savings as part of the cost of the construction. for, clients that they, that said that, look, I don't like that to be, I like something that it's more a fixed number that I know, this is the amount that it's gonna cost me. So that should be a key in hand contract where basically you define everything from the beginning, and you basically determine an amount for the whole construction. Normally, it doesn't include appliances and furniture, but everything else will be included in a key in hand contract. What it's the biggest difference there is that then the risk goes completely towards the the construction company. So normally there's, I will say, a 10-15% increase in the cost, normally because of that risk that the company, cannot come back or should not come back to request it for any more money, in order to finish a project. Right now, as how everything is, being in Costa Rica due to the exchange rate, my recommendation will be a cost plus, because there's a lot of variables right now, and exchange rate, it's not great at this moment to have like a key in hand contract.
Well, I think one of the things that we saw with some of our contracts that were key in hand, Eric, was the fact that they actually moved to cost plus, meaning that when that exchange rate went from 680 down to 600, the construction companies were like, look, dude, I can't do this at a key. I can't do this at a key in hand now. Like, we need to move to cost plus. So it's kind of like you might have a key in hand, but there is a risk that you move to a cost plus anyway. And I think with what we're seeing of the exchange rate, I mean, it's at 520 today, if you can believe it, whereas, a couple of months back, we were down at like 490 of like, it's starting to creep up here, that it does look like, I mean, we're doing all of our projects, personal projects, in cost plus at the moment. Because we believe like that's the best way going forward in order to be able to do this. And also we save 10 to 15%, we'll take the risk rather than the actual construction company taking that risk. And really, as you said there, they don't take the risk, because if there is a huge exchange rate change, they come back anyway and negotiate.
Basically, that's how it works. Yeah. Well, normally during the bidding process, the idea will be to select a minimum 3 companies. My suggestion is always to have 5 companies, so that it can give you like a better picture of what the cost of the construction will be. So normally you select like the 5 best companies that you have worked with, or that someone could recommend you, and you basically send all the bids plus a bidding document that it's like a special document that states like all of the different how to say it, it's basically a document that identified all the different characteristics or specific details that are requested during for the bidding or for the quotes. You send out the construction document basically, and at the end what you do is you analyze the bids. If you have a project manager that is taking care of the construction, well, the idea would be to analyze like line by line, comparing all the different quotes of the different bidders there. And in that bidding document that I was mentioning, the idea, like, you send out the detail, the detail of the construction as how you want it to be to get your bids back, and we'll see an example of it soon. And of course, something that is very important, when you get your bids back, your offers back, it's of course doing value engineering, because most of the time you'll find out, that there are some issues that could be, or not issues, there are some things that could be done in a better way that could save money, like, I don't know, a structure. For example, in the structures, you could do your construction, on a regular way, using like normal concrete blocks, or maybe you can go into, depending on the project, you can do metal framing, or there are some like modular construction systems. One is super bloque or ama bloque, where basically they do have like these modular concrete blocks that they will it's more like a Lego type, where they give you like everything that you need, reinforced, the blocks, like all the system, and you just basically, and they give you like drawings in order to assemble it, and it's like a lot faster than the regular construction system. Of course, in Windows, there's it's very important to windows and doors both. It's the same, to keep them between the like normal sizes, and height and width. Nothing that has to be like a spec construction. Everything that something is done on spec, according to any particular specification. Of course, that's going to increase the cost. So just like, for example, in a project that we had, basically by having a sliding doors that they were 2 feet higher than the normal height, that increases the cost basically in a 30% of the cost of the windows. So things like that, it's like very important just to review in that value engineering process. And of course, like in finishes, there's like a lot of different things. You could have like a very expensive tile, or you could have like a good tile, like a very good tile, that it's gonna give you like your same the same finish. Polished concrete, depending on the tile that you are selecting, you could use polished concrete that it works very good, and the cost is not as high. But so it's a matter of just like looking in detail.
Yeah, I mean, just to add to that, I mean, Eric, we're yet to find an architect that goes that deep, or a company that goes this deep as we normally do. Because again, I mean, if you have project managers, they're owners reps, they're on your side, and they're trying to basically, I would say, optimize your project as quick as much as possible. I mean, we've seen, architects use wood before, that was like God, what is the name? Almond wood throughout a house, which we saw that when we reviewed a project once, and we asked the client, hey, did you choose almond wood? And they were like, no, but almond wood is one of the most expensive woods here in Costa Rica, and we were like, look, he was like, I did not know that, and doors, and there were just so many things that, even the architect is involved in the design process, but then from that is the engineers aren't involved in that process the majority of the time, right, Eric? They're just given the actual architectural drawings, and then from there they design them. So a lot of the time they don't have the context on what they're actually, designing, because they've not been in throughout that whole process and are not aware of the budget either as well.
Correct.
Yep. And we've seen it in structural stuff, we've seen in electrical stuff, that like, it's very important, this part of the process, because once you make the decision here, everything going forward comes from, from those documents, and those documents then, then go into bidding, etc. So you just need to really make sure that you value engineer the whole project really from the beginning.
Yep, exactly.
So
it's very important. Okay, so this is basically a sample, a very small sample. Of course, this is a very long analysis, but this is like a line-by-line analysis, where basically you have like the different activities of the construction. So you have basically what you do is you just like have like you lay out all the bits, the 5 different bits, and like that it allows you to identify which are the activities that are higher in the different bits, or sometimes that are very low, that you can actually tell that it's not going to be enough money to do an activity. And a lot of time we go back to review those bids, and we ask the different bidders, like, hey, look, this is something that it's not okay. This amount is what we call well, in Spanish, it's like a risky, that's how we call it, like a risky amount, that we already know that it's not going to be enough to do an activity or a construction. And normally, they come back, saying like, look, thanks for the advice, we made a mistake. We quoted more than it had it to be quoted, or we quoted less than it had it to be quoted, like they made a mistake on their calculation. So this line-by-line analysis, like really give you a clear picture and an understanding, of the whole budget. And also when you review this with the clients, it gives them confidence that it, of where their money is gonna be, and where is they are spending more. Normally, it's in the finishes process, but this is mainly the analysis that should be done on any bidding process. Okay, after, well, or during the bidding process, in order to do that as a parallel process and not losing time, like there, normally you go into the permitting process, where basically everything is submitted to the CEFIA, the College of Engineers here in Costa Rica. That is like the first organization or the first institution that checks all the construction drawings, then make sure that you have like, well, everything that is there, that it's a plano that is approved by the municipality, the catastro that is approved by the municipality, what we call a plano visado, then a water letter that it's very important. It's becoming critical here in Costa Rica. There's a lot of different projects at this moment that are stopped because they didn't have the correct water letter, and that's something that it's crucial. Right now, nothing moves if there's not water in the project. So just they make sure that the water letter is a correct one. The uso de suelo, that is basically the land usage, what you can do or not in your lot, in your property. There's different activities that you are allowed, or not activities, constructions that you are allowed to do in the property. So that's very important also to make sure that what you want to do is aligned to the uso de suelo. If not, you're not going to be able to do it. Then that the taxes are already paid and updated so that you don't have any delays there. And of course that you have a complete set of construction documents. Once everything that's presented at the CEFIA, like they will approve it, they do a first, they will give you like a first value. They are the ones that set up the construction value for all the taxes that you're gonna have to pay. Normally, when you submit to the College of Engineers, you propose a construction cost, but which they will review it, and if they think it's a lower cost, they could increase it. Normally it's the amount that the professional sets, when they submit the document, that's normally approved by the College of Engineers. So the cost of that valuation of the College of Engineers, it's at 3%. Takes them then it will take them between a month and a half maximum in order to approve that. And once it's approved by by the College of Engineers, it goes into the municipality. That it starts like a whole new revision by the municipality. They will not review, they will review the construction drawings, not as detailed as the College of Engineers, but mostly they will review that, that the project complies with their regulations of the use of the land that they have. And well, there you have to pay a 1% fee of the municipality. Then there's when you get your construction permit. And of course, they will request the insurance, the labor insurance, that it's a must. In Costa Rica, you will need to pay a labor insurance for the workers that are going to be on the construction. That's around 3.5%. And with all of that, you get your final construction permit and you're able to start. And municipality takes normally, I would say, a month, depending on the municipality, to be a month and a half.
Cool. I think by the time that you're done with permitting, the permitting runs kind of, above also the, the bidding and also this contracting as well. So really the idea here is the way that typically it works, you have both of them running in parallel. So once you have your permitting, you've already finished this section, which is the contracting, and then you're ready to basically hit the ground kind of run. So the contract takes about a month. Sometimes it can be a little bit shorter, guys. Typically it's a contract that a lawyer has prepared. They may have iterative contracts that they've been improving all of the time. Also, you need to really define in that contract as well the payment schedule. I've heard horror stories of, hey, we gave the construction company 50% upfront. Like, don't do that. Like, the most you should probably be giving is what, 15%, Eric, to get started?
Yeah, 50%. Normally it's a 15%, and that 15% of that initial payment is deducted for every payment that you give to the company, the construction company. That's the norm. That should be the way to do it in order to protect yourself, from being from a fraud, basically.
Yeah, I mean, just never pay, like you should be paying this in milestones every 2 weeks or every month, depending on where your project guys, but never pay big chunks of money up front. I mean, it's just a lot of the time you do not know what the financial situation of these construction companies are. A lot of the time we ask them to set up a separate bank account for this as well, so that we can see the money coming in and also going out. So we can also kind of audit that a little bit as well. But again, that's kind of just a little bit of a difference, that we provide. But then also, we also have a bit of a holdback within the contracts as well. It's not always there. We like a holdback that's usually paid on the final month there as well. I mean, Eric, is that typically around 5% of payments every month?
Yes, correct. That's normally a 5% that it's repaying until basically 1 month after the sign off of the construction. When the client receives the construction, 100% satisfied with everything being fixed, detailed as how they wanted. After that moment, 1 month after that day, the money that retained is, being delivered to the construction company.
Okay. We had a quick question come in here. I'm just going to take a pause here from Jake Duncan. How do they gauge the labor insurance? Is it just a flat fee of the estimated amount of the bill? Yeah, I mean, that's basically it. It's the amount that I think that Sophia have put on the bill. And that's typically a lot cheaper than the actual final price of it. And then it's 3.5% of that amount that Sophia, the College of Engineers, place on it. So it's not a flat fee, it's a percentage of the estimated amount of the bill. So 3.5%.
Correct.
So, I mean, typically, again, also one of the things is penalties for lateness as well, guys. That's kind of something that's negotiated, depending on how big the build is. If they say it's going to take 9 months to build, you say, typically we have for every day after that, there's a penalty of $250, $500, $1,000, depending on how big the build is, up to 30 days, basically. So it's kind of also capped as well. But that's also a good one to have. The reason being is a lot of the time you may be planning to come down and you book everything and it's not ready. So you can kind of then use that money as well to also stay in certain places. I mean, everything is very negotiable, I think, when it comes to some of these things within the contract. But I think it's very important to also have a penalties clause within this as well, guys. Also, with currency variations, it's very usually typically, smart if you're going to have a fixed price contract, that if there is a swing in the actual currency, of the exchange rate of +5 or +10%, plus or minus, that you guys come back and you actually talk about it as well, because you never want this to be a win-lose situation or a lose-win. Like, it needs to always be, as I say, a win-win or a lose-lose. It just can't be one party winning and the other one losing here. So we always make sure that there's just in our especially our fixed price contracts, that if there is a change in the exchange rate, for the better or for the worse, that we come back down and we basically we talk about it. And then also there's usually a bit, as I said, there are a bit of backwards and forwards about accepting terms. But I always say that, like, if a construction company is not willing to, number one, have a decent payment schedule, not have a holdback, not be open to penalties, I'm like, something's wrong here already from the beginning, guys. Like, you should. It's just your spider senses should go off and you should say, look, something's not right here. Like, any, I would say, established construction company is going to be okay with this, because this is how it works in the industry. But I think what we've seen here is that because there's been so much demand, you've had like foremen set their own construction company up that don't know how to administer, the funds coming in, etc. And then from that is when they won't accept these types of contracts here. Or it's just that they just don't like that. They don't want to take these risks, and they don't like being put into like a corner on some of these. Like, I have to build it in a certain period of time. I'm going to have a 5% holdback. Like, as I said, any decent construction company is going to be okay with these terms that we've mentioned there. So as I said there, that contracting takes about a month. It could be 2 weeks. But now, basically, once you've got that contract signed, you've got your permitting. Now we're into construction. Which again, here is the final slide here when it comes to the actual process, guys. So
Okay, basically on construction, just you can hear me well, yes?
Yep.
Yep, okay, perfect. Well, during construction, it's very important just to review quality of work. And that's why you need to have inspections. Normally, the inspections are done, you know, by the professionals that did the design of the construction documents, architects, engineers. They are not part of the construction company. The construction company does. It's important that when you select a construction company, that it does have an engineer or an architect or professional, that it's responsible for the construction itself, but it's called the technical direction, so that professional, it's has to guarantee you as a client, that everything is done in order, and it's done according to the construction document. But in order to guarantee that, that's where the inspections come from, the architects or engineers that did the design. Normally, it takes, I would say 4 to 5 visits for the structural engineers, and then 4 to 5 visits for electromechanical engineers. The architects are the ones that does more inspections because it's more critical at the end of the finishes and all of that part. So they normally do, I would say, a bit more than 10 inspections. Of course, if you have a project manager, the project manager should do weekly visits just to make sure that everything is in order. And project manager is the one that should be approving the request for disbursement of the construction. Okay, so what it says here, review payment of milestone, that it's important to be determined since the beginning. If the payments are going to be by milestone, normally, most of the contracts now are done by construction progress. So every month there's a report that is presented with the progress of the construction, and based on that progress is the amount of money that it's dispersed to the construction company. And of course, it's very important to just manage the timeline so that the project stays in the time estimated for the construction, and it's very important to be in those inspections, and to the construction, just to review the timeline and just to make sure that everything is going in order to that program, just not to have any surprise at the end. And of course, like in most of projects, there's going to be change orders. Very important just to manage them and to be clear since the beginning how those change orders are going to be managed, basically. And of course, consider a project manager, or an owner representative, especially, if you are not in the country, if you're not able to visit the project, constantly. It is important, very important to have someone, that guarantee you and covers your back.
Well, I think one of the things that we found, Eric, because we've worked on projects, that have from the beginning, ones that have just gone into construction, ones that are in the middle of construction, ones that have stopped construction because there's no funds left. Like we've been involved in all that. I think our learning here is that typically the architects and engineers don't know building and building quality, if that makes sense. Meaning that, like, some of them do, don't get me wrong, but I would say I'm yet to find, someone that's like a lot of those architects that have been on the site every single day and understand to use spacers and rebarring, or the best methods for construction, if that makes sense. I mean, when we do inspections, we find a lot of that. And when we question the architects or engineers, they're baffled sometimes, that like they don't have that knowledge. I'm not saying in all circumstances, but in some circumstances, we've definitely found that.
Yeah, we have found some. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So, yeah. I mean,
and that's important, Sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead, Eric.
No, and that's important, just to have someone that has a good experience in construction, just to be able to find those small details that sometimes, can become big issues at the end of the construction.
Yeah. Well, guys, that's basically a summary there of the whole construction process, as you guys can see. I think we've covered all of that from design to construction docs, permitting, and then in parallel bidding, value engineering to the contract to construction, and then basically delivery. I would say again there, if everything goes well, 17 to 20 months, 21 months after you've bought your property, you'll basically then have a house to move into. To understand kind of the fees here, we've kind of mentioned them at a variety of different areas here. Your architectural fee is going to be around about 5% of your total project, guys. Your permitting is going to be around about 5% as well. Also, I'm going to say inspections, 5%, guys. Once you start calculating them, so it's going to be a total of around 15% of your project. So if it's a $500,000 project, $75,000 of that basically is going to be paid in fees for these things. One of the things that we do suggest is to fix inspections, with fixed prices, meaning that like instead of it being a percentage of, say, hey, architect, how much is it per visit? Okay, it's $750. Okay, engineer, how much is it per visit? Okay, it's $650. Just so that you know how many visits are required and an actual total amount rather than it being a percentage. Nobody really likes percentages a lot of the time. So if you know how much all of those visits are going to cost you from the beginning, I think it's very, very helpful. So in summary here, guys, our top 5 recommendations when building and constructing in Costa Rica. Choose an architect you enjoy working with. As you can see there, guys, it's a long process. It could be a 2-year process. So you better like the architect that you're working with. We've actually had cases where a couple of months in, the client has decided to change architects, which is fine, as long as you go further on down the line. Like once you're in the construction, you don't change your architect. Like they are responsible for that design. So, you don't do that. But I think it's really important to get to know your architects and spend some time with them because, again, you're going to spend 2 years working with them. Budget, guys, as I said here. Typically, architects are creating art pieces, without huge considerations. And they're not going to tell you that when you make a decision in the design that it now is up to your budget. You usually find that a lot of the time when it comes back to bidding. And we've got many, many cases of that. But I would constantly ask for budget updates as you go through stages in the design process. Review bids in depth. Typically, this doesn't happen, guys. Typically, the architect may have a construction company. They may only put it out to 1 to get a quote, maybe 2 at the most. But I think it's really important to do this, go through this bidding process in depth. As Eric mentioned there, if you guys do hire an owner's rep or project management team, they'll go out to 5 different companies for you and also value engineer it. And the fees that you end up paying a project manager will probably even be covered in that bidding and also value engineering as well. They'll save you that plus more going through that process because they're just looking out for your interest throughout that whole process as well. They're kind of like an auditor of the work that's being done. So I sit there, with basically value engineering. Create a great construction contract because that's really going to be the basis for everything during construction, guys. As we've mentioned there, make sure it has penalties, make sure that it has clauses on exchange rate, make sure it has a holdback, and also that you have a definitive time and number of months that it's going to be the contract is going to be for. And also make sure that the construction work is being reviewed as well, guys, throughout every single stage. A lot of the stuff can be hidden. Eric, we've had water tanks before where the foundation wasn't done correctly and it's collapsed. There's been a variety of different things before, and that's stuff that you don't see until it's finished and you're using the house and then kind of it collapses. And yes, there is a guarantee on construction here, of 5 years. And typically some of the stuff, kind of the more fixtures and fitting stuff will have a year. And that's why it's so important to have a great construction company because you want to make sure that they're going to be there in 5 years to still help you out if there is any structural issues there as well, guys. So, and with that, I wrap up the seminar on construction and building here in Costa Rica. I hope it's been useful, guys. Do we have any questions? I'll wait here 30 seconds here to see if we have any questions. I see Tanya has a question here. Let me just see if I can allow Tanya to talk. There you go. Tanya, I think you might need to unmute yourself.
Is there any chance of getting a recording sent to us for
Yeah.
this?
Yes, of course. It'll be posted on YouTube, Tanya, as well. So we'll provide it out. Jake will actually do a follow-up with everyone after it as well, and we'll provide the link in there for you. So
Excellent. Thank you.
you're welcome. Well, we must have done a good job, Eric, because I don't hear any other questions here. So
Great. Oh,
wait, we do have here. Oh, we do. Jake says pros and cons of using 18 gauge metal galvanized studs. I've only found one company in Costa Rica called Buildtech, and I think the speed is attractive. I know that we've met with Buildtech.
Yep.
I mean, yeah, I mean, pros and cons of
Right.
using it, I mean, supposedly. I mean, what would you say, Eric?
Well,
I mean, I think one of the things,
Interesting,
Eric,
yeah.
we found when talking with them, it had to be very structured, the build. Like you couldn't have, you know, like wide doors that open. Like it had to be, you know, and the support beams that were being used downstairs is also, you know, needed to be used upstairs as well. Like they needed to be a lot of mirroring things.
yeah, it's more for, it's a very tight construction or tight design, you know, it's like, it doesn't allow you, as you said, you know, it doesn't allow you to be very creative, but yeah, but it works.
It's quick, and it's quick as well. I mean, I think for commercial,
exactly.
it sounded great. You know, when we were looking at doing the office buildings, Eric, you know, it sounded great. It was very, very quick. I mean, they basically pour the cement, you know, foundation, and then it's just straight up. I know it's very
Correct.
similar to the Bali designs as well. I think it requires a little bit more maintenance than building in concrete as well. You know, just because of over the years. I mean, concrete's going to last years. You just need to take good, you know, care of the actual building a little bit more.
And it has to be well done since the beginning, you know, there's no, if it's not done well enough, you'll start having a lot of headaches very soon. So just make sure, you know, that it's very well done since the beginning.
Yeah. And I mean, look, the Buildtech one, I think is very similar to just building in steel structure anyway, which a lot of construction companies can work in as well. And it just depends. I mean, I think once you
Correct.
start going up multiple stories, I know Buildtech can certainly do it as well. It's just, and it's seismically safe as well. I mean, in the US, I think a lot of people use the steel structure, especially hotels use a lot of the steel structure, because I know Buildtech had spent quite a bit of time working on those Quinta hotels. And they did some roof structures, I think, on the Waldorf Astoria. So yeah, I think it's a good option. It just depends what you're looking to build. Well, fantastic. I don't see any other questions in here, guys. So thank you very much for everyone. If anyone would like to get in contact with us and discuss construction in Costa Rica, feel free to. Jake also will do a follow-up to everyone that signed up here. And we'll also put this on YouTube, Tanya. So we'll do that later on today and share that link with you. But really appreciate everyone's time, and hope you have I hope wherever you are, it's as not as wet as it is here in Heredia at the moment. So
Yep. Thank you very much.
thanks very much, guys.